And Combo 4 Super 6 plays. Visit the NLA headquarters in Pauls Avenue or WhatsApp 495-6886 for more details. Super 6. Bigger jackpots. More chances to win.
Play for.
Here's your chance to win even more from the National Lotteries Authority. When you play for 2 times daily, choose 4 numbers from 0 to 9 and you can win up to $5,000 with a $1 inline bet.
Make sport and back it up too. That's right. There'll be lots of cash waiting for you.
Get your tickets Monday to Saturday for the Play 4 midday draw at 1:50 p.m. and the Play 4 night draw 9 p.m. So easy
Play
to play.
for, you'll win even more.
Instacash, a new terminal game from the National Lotteries Authority. It's fast, easy to play. There's no waiting for a draw, and you can win instantly. Purchase your tickets from any Lotto terminal and win lots of cash prizes. There's the game Cash Stash, available at $2, and bingo tickets for $3, where you can win on the spot. Instacash, fast, easy to play, and you can win instantly.
Here's Zoro. Hey. Yeah, but that has not been the problem.
Thinking of winning the lotto jackpot? Well, there is an easy way. Combo Play. Choose 4 numbers from 1 to 36. That's a combo 4 at a cost of $64. Match any 4 of the 5 numbers and win the lotto jackpot. There's Combo 6, where you purchase 6 numbers for only $12. Match any 5 of the 6 lotto numbers and hit the jackpot. How about Combo 7? That's a purchase of 7 lotto numbers for $42. Match any 5 of the 7 numbers and you will win the jackpot. There are also Combo 3, Combo 8, and Combo 9 lotto plays. Visit the NLA headquarters in Pauls Avenue or WhatsApp 495-6886 for more details. Lotto, you have to be in it to win it.
Good evening and welcome to this week's edition of Roundtable Talk. This week, we want to have a conversation about the socioeconomic impact of crime. Of course, we've been having quite an increased incidence of crime happening here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, indeed across the region, but we have not taken the time to look at the impact that it's having on our society, our communities, our psyche, our health. To help me do that this evening, we have Professor Justin Robinson. Of course, he's an economist and he's principal of the Five Islands campus of the UWI based in Antigua. We also have medical practitioner Dr. Malcolm Grant, and we also have Jamaican Vincentian Jeff James, who is a development consultant and also a sociologist who has worked extensively in the region. Good evening, gentlemen. So good to have all three of you join us this evening. And I want to start first by talking about what we mean when we talk about socioeconomic. What is the socioeconomic system? And maybe I can start with Professor Robinson in terms of an explanation for this term.
Okay, thanks. Good evening to you and to your audience. So as you say, this the economic, I guess I would start maybe with the economic. So we have the economy. What's the impact of crime in terms of the economy? So an example for that might be the economy depends a lot on consumer spending, how much money people have to go in town and buy goods and services. If because of crime, people are spending a larger chunk of that money on home security systems, then they have less money to buy other goods and services. If because of crime, persons don't want to come out late at night or come out in the evenings and they're worried, and people who make money from activities at that time of the day. Again, if businesses have to spend more money on security, again, this is money that is really coming out of the economy. St. Vincent is trying to build a tourism economy and so on. If because of crime, visitors don't want to come, so there are some real costs in terms of business activity and the cost of doing business that can be linked to crime, and also just economic potential, because labor is a factor of production. We need workers to produce goods and services in the economy. And if through crime, which is very true in our case, where violent crime is disproportionately among the young, then we are losing people in their most productive years. So again, that has a negative impact, the fact that people are losing their lives during their most productive years. And of course, the cost of treating people who are the victims of violent crime. I mean, our health systems are overburdened already, but then you have these additional costs and pressures on the system, violent crime. And we focus a lot on the people who die, but there are people who are maimed and injured and have to go through life with long-term injuries, and there are significant costs there. So those economic dollar costs are significant. And then the social impact, what's the impact on mothers of losing their children at an early age? The impact on children of losing their parents. People in society no longer trust each other. I mean, I grew up in a St. Vincent where, you spent every night in the evening hanging on the block, talking to people. People were very comfortable walking around and so on. Is the social cohesion and bonding damaged if people are now suspicious of each other? What's the effect on the society when we live in fear of each other? So it's really, those are the things what the socioeconomic try to capture.
Okay, Jeff James, can you give us a sociological perspective?
I think Jeff is muted.
Jeff, you might be muted.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. I think crime is a multidimensional phenomenon, and people look at economic factors and social and psychological factors. Then there's also the most recently, people have begun to look at biological factors, which are part of crime taking place in communities. But if you're to look at some of the psychological factors, I think Professor Robinson has mentioned the question of how crime impacts on reduced social cohesion and the broadly speaking, the quality of life of people, the interaction with people, the question of you have to look at the impact of crime on children, for example. I know, for example, in some countries, in some inner city communities, you go into a community and they ask you, where are the men? And they tell you the men are either dead or in prison. And so this impacts on children. And you may ask, where are the women? The women have to go abroad to find means of living. And children are left either on their own or with grandparents who have problems bringing them up. So all of this feeds into the problems which are created and direct people into a an area of crime. So, for example, if persons are left on their own, they become susceptible and vulnerable to predators, to their influence into joining gangs, and so on. So these are some of the implications that you have with the way society is structured and the way it is organized. And so we have to look at how how the institutions function, which are supposed to organize society in a coherent manner. There's structures in the society as well, which contribute to crime and impact on the well-being of people. And at the individual level and the family level, if people come from dysfunctional families, then it is going to impact on the way they behave in society and steer them into this avenue of crime. So it's a very complex problem. The area of socialization, how people are socialized, how the role of the media, the role of the education system, the role of the church. All of these are agencies which impact on how people behave and the whole issue of crime in the society.
Okay, Dr. Grant, a medical and health perspective. Are you muted?
Yeah, sorry about that. Good evening, Teresa and fellow panelists. Interestingly, over the last, I would say, 2 to 4 weeks, I've seen quite a few patients, all female, who have reported that they've had sleeping problems as a result of the recent spike in crime. And I think the thing that they are most worried about now, there was a recent spate of robberies where allegedly some chemical was used to anesthetize individuals within homes and allowing the burglars free passage. And I've had mothers tell me, look, they've been getting up every half hour to an hour, checking to make sure that everything is intact. They've been getting up in between those times if they hear strange noise to see what's happening. They have been closing windows, even if they have burglar bars, because they don't want anybody pushing a can of spray through those burglar bars and spraying their families. And this has had a ripple effect throughout the family because you have kids seeing this happening and they too are worried. And so the main central issue is, I would say, insomnia. But insomnia is significant. The human being needs sleep, they need food, and they need fluid to function. And the average human needs 7 to 8 hours sleep at night. A lot of us shortchange that because we may not want to shortchange the food aspect, or we can't shortchange the fluid aspect. So, I keep telling patients, look, we are like a car. A car needs gas, it needs oil, it needs a coolant for the radiator. If you're out, if you don't have enough oil in the car, it will not function properly. A lot of people come to me and say, look, doc, I'm not sleeping well at night, or I can't get enough sleep because I have 2 jobs, or I have other important things doing. Can you prescribe a vitamin? A vitamin is not going to substitute for sleep, okay? So you don't sleep, you release more what we call stress hormones. Those are adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol. Those effectively increase blood pressure. It increases the chances of developing diabetes. With or without diabetes and blood pressure in the picture, you have an increased chance of what we call cardiovascular disease. So you have an increased chance of stroke and heart attacks. You're not sleeping, so you something that interfaces with what Professor Robinson was saying. You either call in sick for work or your productivity goes down. okay, because you can't concentrate as well. You're more likely to make mistakes during your workday, okay? And it's also shown that there is an increased chance, if you're not sleeping well, there's an increased chance of premature death, okay? If you suffer with things like asthma and epilepsy, you're more likely to be more prone to more frequent epileptic attacks and asthma attacks. And in the case of children, they're getting nightmares, they're not sleeping, their school performances fall, they are much more likely to be delinquent in school. They are much more likely to even follow a life of crime down the road. So there is a significant ripple effect that can be seen across society if this crime wave is not reined in and reined in as soon as possible.
Thank you, Doctor. And certainly you made both an economic and psychological impact there. When we come back, we're going to be taking our first break. When we come back, we are going to talk a little bit about the importance of understanding the socioeconomic relationship in order to devise effective strategies to address the crime situation. We'll be back in just a moment.
You can increase your chances of winning the Super 6 jackpot with a combo play. Remember, Super 6 numbers are from 1 to 28. Choose any 5 Super 6 numbers. That's a combo 5 for $69. Match any 5 of the 6 numbers and you will win the jackpot. Choose 7 Super 6 numbers for $21. Match any 6 of the 7 numbers and win the jackpot. There's more. Combo 8, where you purchase 8 Super 6 numbers for $84. Match any 6 of the 8 numbers and you will win the jackpot. There are also Combo 3 and Combo 4 Super 6 plays. Visit the NLA headquarters in Pauls Avenue or WhatsApp 495-6886 for more details. Super 6, bigger jackpots, more chances to win.
Play for.
Here's
Welcome back. Why is it important for us to understand the socioeconomic relationship so that we can develop strategies that are effective in addressing the crime situation or even understanding the crime situation?
I think that's a very important question because I think as we think about crime, it can be very useful to understand that and Malcolm mentioned the crime wave, that crime in the Caribbean seems to be very different. I often refer to a study that was done by the IMF in 2016, and things haven't changed that much. They looked at 4 categories of crime, like property crimes. Is it possible at all for me to share my screen, or that wouldn't work? I mean, it might be easier for your audience or others to follow.
Technical people, I'm not sure. Is it possible?
But I guess while we do that, in interest of time, in terms of, so the study looked at the percentage of the population in a country that was the victim of crime in a 12-year period, in a 12-month period. The percentage of the population that was the victim of crime in a 12-month period, and there were 4 categories of crime. So in terms of property crime, the world average is 8.1% of the population will be a victim of a property crime in a year. And in the Caribbean, the average is 4.8. We are well below the world average in terms of the incidence of property crime. When you look at burglary, The world average is 4.5% of the population in a year. Caribbean, 4.1, again, below the world average. Robbery, on average, 3% of the population of the world in a year. Caribbean, 2.7. But when you come now to assault and threat, the world average is 4.5. And we have the highest percentage in the world at 6.8. So when we're talking about crime and understanding the socioeconomic, I think it's important that in a way we have a problem in the Caribbean, or what is unique about us in many ways is the incidence of violent crime. Caribbean people are the friendliest, jokiest people in the world, but we murder each other at rates that are way off the chart. And I think understanding why are people so violent? Why are we so prone to this incidence of violent crime? Because that's where we are top of the charts in the world. On other types of crime, we are below the world average and well below. But in this category, violent crime, homicide, that's where we stand out. And it'd be very interesting to hear from people like Jeff and others, I have my own ideas as to what might be behind it, as to why we stand out there. But interesting to hear some of the sociologists and others with that perspective. But I think that context is important. And we live in a violent part of the world. I was just reading a UNDP report for 2023, and 2023, and it shocked me. 62% of all the people murdered in the world in 2023 came from 3 countries. All these nearly 200 recognized countries in the world, 62% of persons murdered in the world came from 3 countries, and all in the Americas: Mexico, Colombia, and the United States. So we live in a violent neighborhood, and we seem to be part of that trend of violence, particularly in the form of homicide. So I just wanted to put that context, because it suggests that you're not talking about crime driven by unemployment or people are hungry, or because in terms of burglary, theft, those kinds of things, we are not anyway above the average in terms of that type of crime. It's rarely this tendency to really homicide and assault.
Jeff James.
I think what Professor Robinson was pointing to is the deeply historical factors. We have come through a history of slavery and colonialism. We have had police forces that were set up not for citizen security per se, but to carry out the objectives of the colonizing power. So we grew up in societies which where there's a culture of violence in terms of solving conflicts and differences, and I think that is a big part of it. But in the last maybe 15, 20 years, with the exposure to electronic media, we see very much what is happening in the United States. We move to and from the United States very easily. We're very close to them geographically, and the guns which are now used in committing crimes, they come from that country. So if you put firearms in the hands of people who maybe are violent in nature, then this is what is going to happen. Then you also have the whole issue of drug trafficking and so on, which generates a lot of conflict as well. And then the way we socialize our children, we accustomed to spare the rod and spoil the child. And so we use violence in the way we bring up children. And so it's a learned behavior. And if you put them in circumstances, in an environment where they're exposed to negative influences like gangs, they're exposed to guns, they're exposed to drugs and so on, then what you have is violent producers coming up into the society. And where we take this for granted, we take violence as a way of solving problems, as a way of, it becomes part of the culture, part of the reality. Then people only become concerned when it begins to affect them personally. And that's where we are now. That we pay very little attention to the way people are socialized. We pay very little attention to the way we deal with conflict. And you produce an environment where people have access to guns. You have situations where we grew up, many of us grew up in dysfunctional families, and we are exposed to all sides, sorts of external influences. And what we have is a mushrooming of violence in societies.
But what has changed since you grew up and since I grew up? What has really changed?
Can I interject here?
Sure, you can.
We're talking about the Caribbean as though it's a homogeneous society, but we have anomalies. We have, for example, Grenada. Grenada has a very, very, very low murder rate. As a matter of fact, the murder rate in St. Vincent is 8 to 9 times Grenada's, okay? How come we have a country that's less than 100 miles away? Similar population, similar size, etc. But yet their experience is totally different than ours, or even St. Lucia's. So I think that if we're going to do a study, and I'm very skeptical about these studies sometimes, okay? We need that information, but at the same time, we have to be careful about the length of time that these studies take to, how long it takes to collect data and then, be reviewed and then implemented, okay? So, I mean, I get back to that just now, but in terms of Grenada, I think that we need to look at them and see what they are doing differently than we are to see if there could be some short-term solutions. Because I think in terms of solving this issue, we have to look at it. What can we do that's immediate, that's expeditable, that's implementable, that's practical?
But Grenada might be changing somewhat from the reports that I've been seeing. Grenada probably...
one or two anomalies. I mean, they had these 3 guys recently, but that is an anomaly. It's not...
More than that.
Okay, but okay, I mean, you don't...
Maybe it's organized crime, Maybe Jeff started hitting the nail on the head. What has changed in the region is we are now up against organized crime, well-financed, well-armed criminal networks because one of the ways economists sort of think about crime, you sort of look at risk return. Huh? Malcolm, if you commit crime, right, one of your risks is that you might get arrested, you go to jail, your family will suffer, etc. But if you are part of a network now that if you commit a crime, they could hire a lawyer for you. Reduce your incident. Well, in fact, there might be a structure that could reduce the incidents that you're going to get arrested. If you get arrested, there are lawyers who will defend you, reducing your chances of getting incarcerated. If you're incarcerated, your family will be taken care of while you are serving the time. These are all factors, really, that can be playing in to what we're saying. People get provided with weapons.
Yeah.
And so my own view is that one of the things that may have changed fundamentally is really the presence of organized crime, which is reducing the risk to individuals of doing crime, increasing the returns. Because, if you are a youngster, I mean, you sort of think of somebody working at the airport, Malcolm, you are paid 3,000 EC a month or whatever, and then you sort of getting paid a 10 grand just to look the other way or not see. And then things, and in terms of dealing with it, I think it's important we recognize that crime is part of life. It's been there from time immemorial. What may be very different that we are dealing with now is organized crime and the extent to which these small islands of ours are nodes maybe transshipment point in a very sophisticated international drug trade through organized crime. And, you know, when you have disputes, I mean, I think Jeff alluded to it, when you have disputes, you can't take it to court, you know. When product is being shipped
The law of the jungle. Yeah.
and it gets lost, there ain't no insurance, you know. So this seems to be, you have disputes and a system where there's only one punishment, death.
And that's gang related, that's drug related. But we also have people committed murders because they suspected a baby was a devil, okay? And getting back to mental health services too. That's another area that we fail miserably in, okay? And a lot of these individuals, okay, who commit these type of crimes, okay, stabbing, I'm speaking, you know, arguments, they stab each other, etc. I'm not speaking drug related, etc. Those individuals, I'm pretty certain, I've spoken to teachers who said, you know, he was my student from the time he was 10, now commits murder at 18. And I knew he was going to get into trouble, you know. But there's no referral service. There's nobody. Who do you send such an individual to try and rehabilitate them, to try and deviate them from that obvious path that this teacher recognized 8 years prior to this person committing this particular crime?
Yes, I'm agreeing with you. And I think, Teresa, I think that there are two issues that are emerging. How do our societies deal with the organized criminal networks, largely in drugs and so on? I think that's one chunk. And then something Malcolm is highlighting, which is becoming a big issue already, the mental health issues. How does our society deal with mental health? Do we prioritize it enough? Do we recognize it? I certainly remember growing up, we said so crazy. We didn't really take it too serious. You know, so clearly mental health issues and really giving that issue the attention it deserves and the resources, I think, is a critical element in there.
Okay, we'll take a second break, and when we come back, we'll talk about those two things, the whole question of organized crime as well as a mental health issue, and what are some of the practical suggestions or some of the way that we can part the way forward to help to assuage the situation. Back in just a moment.
Thinking of winning the lotto jackpot? Well, there is an easy way. Combo Play. Choose 4 numbers from 1 to 36. That's a combo 4 at a cost of $64. Match any 4 of the 5 numbers and win the lotto jackpot. There's Combo 6, where you purchase 6 numbers for only $12. Match any 5 of the 6 lotto numbers and hit the jackpot. How about Combo 7? That's a purchase of 7 lotto numbers for $42. Match any 5 of the 7 numbers and you will win the jackpot. There are also Combo 3, Combo 8, and Combo 9 lotto plays. Visit the NLA headquarters in Pauls Avenue or WhatsApp 495-6886 for more details. Lotto, you have to be in it to win it.
Welcome back. Let's look at the issue of mental health first. And for that, we'll start with the doc.
Hi.
Doctor? Okay.
Hi, Teresa. Okay. WHO suggestions. You should have at least 2.5 psychiatrists for every 100,000 people. So, okay, we can have half a psychiatrist. So we should have a minimum of 2. Right now in St. Vincent, there's no psychiatrist in the government service. And I think mental health issues are overwhelming us right now, okay? Some of them are primary and some of them are secondary. Primary meaning this person would have developed mental health issues whether or not there was any external influences. Secondary being to something like, drugs, even marijuana. Marijuana exposure in teenagers, in some vulnerable individuals, can lead to acute psychotic episodes. And I think that, I make the point, if St. Vincent didn't have a general surgeon, we will jump through all sort of hoops, over all sort of hurdles to make sure that we have somebody to take out your appendix when you have appendicitis, or treat your child when they have intussusception or volvulus, or one of those intestinal conditions that causes intestinal obstruction. But mental health seems to be relegated to the back burner, where it is not an area that is emphasized, but it is an extremely important area. And this is not something that I cherish saying publicly, but tying in with global warming, studies have shown that in the United States, in cities, I think the cities the study was done in, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, the greatest number of murders and suicides took place on the hottest days of the year. Very interesting, okay? So we are getting hotter, okay? It's much more likely that mental health issues are going to become more commonplace, okay? And this is the best time to have tackled this would have been 5 years ago, but the next best time is now, where we have to, I look at a country like Barbados. Last time that I checked, they have something like about 14 to 16 fully qualified psychiatrists practicing there. It is no way that there's going to be that volume of cases that can occupy the time of 14 to 16 psychiatrists. We should be looking at seeing how we can get some seconded, seeing how we can, because a similar culture, etc., as opposed to using or getting somebody to come here that's totally unfamiliar with our environment, okay, and which is going to be a challenge for them treating psychiatric issues, okay. But it is critical. It is something that
Okay, Jeff James might have something to add from psychological perspective.
Yeah, I think it has to do with the way we treat with mental health issues. I think we're accustomed to looking at persons with mental health issues as people who are crazy, but it is a much broader problem than that. And we can't just simply look at psychiatrists alone, because social workers, psychologists, they all have a role to play in this phenomenon. And these things have to be caught early. Because of the way some children are brought up, the kind of environment in which they grow up, they're exposed to mental health issues. Abuse is a key factor. The whole education system and how children learn, they may have issues learning. Sometimes you don't even know if a child is autistic or not. And they start to get problems at school, and they're alienated because you don't understand the problem. So a lot of interventions need to take place at that very early stage of a child's development, and not allow the problem to develop to an extent where the child has to drop out of school and be exposed to different influences and so on. Sometimes it also needs family therapy, or we work with families to work through some of the issues that they're facing. And so it is not a case where somebody has to be psychotic for you to understand that they have a mental health problem. Some of these problems are deep psychological problems, which if given attention, they can be dealt with. And so if left untreated, if left undiagnosed, these young people, I mean, adolescence is a very critical stage of a person's development, where it comes to mental health issues. You can go over a cliff during that phase of your development. And so why do you have, for example, more boys dropping out of secondary school and girls? It's because boys learn differently. And the way the system is structured, they don't get the opportunity to deal with the issues that they're facing. So I think it requires intervention at the family level, requires intervention at this educational level. We need to have a lot more social workers, a lot more psychologists in place to deal, and counselors to deal with some of the issues that our children and young and adolescents face on a daily basis. That's part of the problem.
How do we get the folks, maybe the parents, the teachers, to understand or recognize when there is a problem, when there are issues? How do we get them involved? And then we have to add the whole question of a stigma where mental health issues are concerned to that mix. Where do we start?
A lot of times they are in denial. Because the problem, a lot of the time the parents are in denial. So you have to have public education about these issues. You have to have work through parent teachers associations where these things are explained. And you have to have support groups where parents who experience similar problems can get together and know that they are not alone with this problem. And it is nothing to be ashamed of. Because as you mentioned, a lot of it is stigmatized. And it doesn't have to be. Because all of this is part of growing up. It is part of our growth and development through life. We come up against these obstacles. And if they are not handled properly, they become more severe and put the individual and the society at risk.
Okay, we'll take a final break. When we come back, we'll talk about the question of organized crime, and we'll also look at whether or not crime is more a social or economic problem. Back in just a moment.
You can increase your chances of winning the Super 6 jackpot with a combo play. Remember, Super 6 numbers are from 1 to 28. Choose any 5 Super 6 numbers. That's a combo 5 for $69. Match any 5 of the 6 numbers and you will win the jackpot. Choose 7 Super 6 numbers for $21. Match any 6 of the 7 numbers and win the jackpot. There's more. Combo 8, where you purchase 8 Super 6 numbers for $84. Match any 6 of the 8 numbers and you will win the jackpot. There are also Combo 3 and Combo 4 Super 6 plays. Visit the NLA headquarters in Pauls Avenue or WhatsApp 495-6886 for more details. Super 6, bigger jackpots, more chances to win.
Welcome back. Professor Robinson identified the whole issue of organized crime as one of the issues we are dealing with. Explain to us the concept of organized crime and why you believe that this is probably one of the greatest things with which we have to contend while we consider addressing the whole issue of crime in this country.
I think one thing the data suggests to us that the problem is violent crime, particularly homicides, as distinct from a number of other categories of crime. And also, when you look at the most recent data on homicides around the world, about 62% come from 3 countries. Colombia, well, Mexico #1, Colombia, then the United States. Those countries are the epicenter, particularly Mexico and Colombia, of what we all popularly call the drug cartels. So, I mean, I'm sort of making a correlation. And I think it's a very different type of crime. So the mental health is extremely important. But in some ways, you might see those events happening more randomly. People managing disputes. You know, people can't manage, they can't resolve conflict. You have crime around that, and I think there are ways to deal with that. But you know, organized crime is a lot more intentional. You know, it can become a lot more pervasive. So the person engaging in criminal activity is not an individual act, whether because of your mental health, I am hungry, I need to get something to eat, or I can't manage a dispute. I am part of a structure. And these, I mean, the language has infiltrated our society. You sort of go around and you hear young men talking, so-and-so is my soul there, look at my soul there. So the persons, you know, they speak about the boss, the don, the big man. There is a structure. It's not just a random event. So that's what I'm talking about. So, and there are resources that you can draw on from within that group. So it could be as simple as a gang or something larger than that. So I think the nature of the crimes we are dealing with and the prevalence of homicide as the issue, the kind of firearms we are seeing using a lot of the crimes, you're not going to access that as an individual in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Those things have to come in from outside and you have to have access to them. It requires a level of resources. Now, organized crime is very difficult to deal with. I'm not sure there is a quick fix. I think you need a variety of strategies and there might not be immediate solutions. Where there have been successes, so cities like London and a number of other big cities, they have had a lot of success through surveillance. You know, so London is plastered with cameras. There's surveillance everywhere. So the law enforcement officers are able to really, in a sense, the presence of cameras increases the likelihood that the perpetrator of a crime will be caught because you're going to have that presence there. So that's one area where that's one being some success. Other areas of success, and these come more from the developed world, has been to go after the money. I mean, so guys like me who grew up on these gangster films, Al Capone, I didn't think of it then, but when I started thinking about this later, Al Capone was never arrested for a violent crime. He actually went to jail for tax evasion. So again, you have all of these. In these societies, everybody seems to know who the big men are, who the dons are. Have they ever filed a tax return? By law, they're supposed to file a tax return. You know, where is this money coming from? Because people going after that big money are saying, you know, just picking up, arresting, and jailing the guys who are doing the shooting, you're really just cutting out the weeds. You know, you're just dealing with the symptoms. You're not attacking the source. So who is going at? So how do you go after the big money? Because these are the ones financing the network. So, and there's been a lot of success in the tax system. Some countries have gone as far as to ban. So like in Scandinavia, they ban large denomination notes. You can't, there are no notes bigger than $100 notes because again, they felt like cash is what drives that underground economy, kind of forcing people to use the payment system. Now, these are all very expensive solutions. One of my colleagues at Cave Hill has had a lot of, he's done a lot of work around what happens in prisons, because there's also a lot of evidence that people get incarcerated, they go to prison, and prison almost becomes a recruiting ground for organized crime while persons are in there. So again, prison rehab, what happens behind bars and so on. So I think it's a multifaceted, So I think it's important to recognize that as one big chunk of the problem because, like we said, that mental health, the history and so on, because different types of problems are likely to require different types of solutions. And it's interesting to have Malcolm on because one of the more interesting approaches I've seen comes from medical colleagues out of St. Augustine who are saying that we need to treat violent crime almost like a public health problem
Yeah.
and bring the public health approach, the way we mobilize against COVID, HIV, AIDS, and so on, just recognize them as public health problems and bring that public health approach.
Interesting. Doc, your response to that?
No, I've heard that proposal advanced in the past, but I don't know if you see our problem is the relatively small community that we exist in. And I know your brother and my sister and, etc. And if they're involved, all of a sudden, we tend to go soft. In other words, well, I don't want to do more than I maybe need to do because it may cause a rift between our families, etc. So I think we have that added challenge as a small society. And I just want to get back to something that Jeff, no, I totally agree with you in terms of you have to have a team approach when dealing with mental health. But I emphasize psychiatrists because they're the only one on the team that can prescribe medicines, okay, if needed. In other words, the social worker is critical, the psychologist is critical, but I have a couple of psychologists in my practice and they're telling me the cog that's most missed within that team at this point in time is the psychiatrists, okay? Because there's so much they can do, but when the individual needs more than just counseling, okay? Or you need to know more than just the family structure, etc. You need that psychiatrist in place. So I totally agree with you. I didn't mean for a moment to marginalize the work of the social worker, very critical, the psychologist, extremely critical, but we don't have that missing link. And the whole issue of crime is not homogeneous. There is a lot of aspects to it, and a single discussion is not going to solve the issue. I hope that it has brought it to the fore. I hope some important people in important places have tuned in, and I hope some bells have gone off. And but I still think that we have to have maybe a three-tiered approach. Immediate, what we hope that we can achieve short term, intermediate, and long term. I think in terms of mental health treatment, that's more long term, okay? But I think immediate, there are certain things that we could look at. I mean, for example, sorry for going off on a tangent, but in terms of guns, I think anyone with an illegal gun should face a similar penalty to somebody who has committed a murder. Because if you have an illegal gun, you intend to use it. Whether or not you intend to use it to commit a crime or defend yourself, you intend to use it, okay? And to shoot somebody else with it. And I think in Barbados, I know at one time they brought in this mandatory 25-year sentence, whether or not once you had an illegal gun and ammunition, but I think they will roll back somewhat on it. But I think we need to look at that sort of approach. So if I have an illegal gun, I have to think, boy, if they catch me, etc. This is something that can put me behind bars for 25 years. But sorry for digressing.
Okay, I know Professor Robinson has to run, but just before you guys go, is crime a social or an economic issue? Just before you go, quickly.
I think it's a social issue that has major economic implications.
Great.
I think it's primarily a social issue. As Professor Robinson mentioned, it has the economic impact. People are driven to crime because of the economic benefits that sometimes they get from it. But I think very importantly in societies, I mean, and reference was made to the situation in Grenada. I mean, I look around at different societies in the Caribbean. I think one of the key elements in terms of combating crime is to look at the value system in these countries and how people are socialized. Do you put a greater premium on material things as against your character? That's an issue that people have to debate, because it seems to me that a lot of emphasis, and a lot of it is coming from North America, that we focus a lot on material things as against who you are as an individual. And so it is very easy. And when we talk about these criminal networks and organized crime, if you have a certain value system, you will be pulled into the dragnet very easily. So that's one thing that we have to look at. We have to deal with values. We have to deal with character education, and the kinds of families that we have now. You can't depend on the family alone to do it. You have to depend on the education system. It's not about the academic type of thing that we tend to focus on. Values is important. Character education is important. The church has a role to play. All the other systems that influence the individual, the media, all of those institutions have a role to play in terms of the kind of society that we develop, and hence determine to what extent that society, that country, is immersed in crime. Because a lot of it has to do with the value system in the society, and how the different organs of the state function as well.
Okay. Great note on which to end this evening's edition of Roundtable Talk. Professor Robinson, Jeff James, and Dr. Grant, thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your thoughts and views with us this evening.
Thank you.
We are so
Thank you for
glad you
having
could join
us.
us. Thank you. We are so glad you could join us this evening. Do join us again next week, Wednesday, for another edition of Roundtable Talk. Good evening.
Thank you very much.
Play for
Here's your chance to win even more from the National Lotteries Authority when you play for 2 times daily. Choose 4 numbers from 0 to 9 and you can win up to $5,000 with a $1 inline bet.
Mace for and back it up too. That's right. There'll be lots of cash waiting for you.
Get your tickets Monday to Saturday for the Play 4 midday draw at 1:50 p.m. and the Play 4 night draw 9 p.m. So easy
Play
to play.
for